Hello, you are listening to the Natural Healing Show for UK Health Radio. I'm your host, Catherine Carrigan, medical intuitive healer and Amazon #1 best-selling author. You can find out more about me and my work at catherinecarrigan.com and unlimitedenergynow.com. While you're there, definitely sign up for my newsletter so you can learn even more about how you can heal yourself naturally. Now, our guest today is Randi Fine. Randi Fine is a narcissistic abuse expert, and you can find out more about Randi Fine and her wonderful work at randifine.com. Welcome, Randi Fine.
Hi, Catherine. It's great to be here. Thanks for inviting me.
So we're going to be talking today about the importance of self-validation after narcissistic abuse. And I think, bluntly, I think there's a lot more interest in understanding narcissists in our culture now, given that, it's widely accepted that our current U.S. President, Donald Trump, has been labeled a narcissist.
Right.
You're a narcissistic abuse expert. So what would I don't want to upset anyone politically speaking, but could you, from your point of view, could you give us the names of some famous narcissists that people might know?
Okay. O.J. Simpson.
Mm-hmm.
Let's see. Let's see, who else would we know? Famous narcissists. I can't.
Would you?
Can't think. O.J. Simpson was a malignant narcissist, which is, there's narcissistic personality disorder, and then there's malignant narcissistic personality disorder. And so people like O.J. Simpson, the thing to look for is these are people that do what they do for the recognition, for the adoration, for the admiration. So, anybody that has acted out and that is their motive, then generally somebody has personality disorder. But what's different about the personality disorder than just narcissism is that when they're called on it, when they're criticized, they rage. So other people, if you just have a overblown sense of self, that doesn't mean that you're going to rage if somebody criticizes you. And you're also going to have the ability to love people and have relationships. But people with this personality disorder, they cannot take any criticism and they can't love. So, that's kind of the guideline. As we're talking, if I think of anybody, I'll let you know.
Okay, awesome.
Anybody comes to mind.
All right. Now, Randi Fine, what are some of the false messages narcissistic abuse victims internalize?
Oh, gosh. You're overreacting. You're thinking crazy. Something is wrong with you. You're exaggerating. You're overdramatic. You're oversensitive. These are the things that they're told, and they're told over and over and over again to the point where it's reinforced and they believe it.
Okay, now let's back up a little bit, because let's say somebody's listening to this broadcast and they're wondering whether or not they're actually in a relationship with a narcissist. Mm-hmm. So what are some of the signs that you're in a relationship with a narcissist, either as a partner, an intimate partner, or a child, or an employee?
Okay. Yeah. If you're a child of a narcissist, well, an adult child, that one's a little bit tougher, and it's very hard to wake up to that. And generally people don't do that until they're in their late 30s, 40s, 50s. So, but what they would notice is that they had a weird background. They don't necessarily know they were abused, and their life has plummeted ever since they became an adult. They don't feel like an adult. They never do. No matter how old they are, they don't feel grown up. They make bad choices. They have no self-esteem. They have very poor relationships, romantic relationships. They're all disasters. They get into relationships with people who abuse them. So that's a pattern. If you're in a relationship with a, like a romantic relationship or married to a narcissist, you'll notice that in the beginning, before you committed to this relationship, they were the perfect person. They checked all the boxes of anything you could have ever wanted. And once you committed somehow to this relationship, it all changed. And so you've been doing nothing but backpedaling. You're trying to get back what you had. This person will devalue you. This person will tell you that nothing you do is right. You will feel like you're losing yourself. You will feel like your very self is disappearing, and that you're living for this other person. And you're constantly walking on eggshells to try to keep things happy and pleasant. But it doesn't last more than a second, and nothing that you do for this person is ever accumulated. So you can do 100 nice things for this person over the years, and if you're not doing what they want you to do in the moment, then they tell you you never do anything for them. So it's a lot of really negative messages. There's also a few good things thrown in there, and they do that on purpose because they want to trip you up. They want to throw you off balance. So every once in a while, they're going to act nice, do something nice, and you're going to hold on to that because that's what you want. Because to have to face what actually happened means the devastation of your relationship, and that's not something you want. So it's complicated. It really is.
Okay. Now we're talking about healing after you've gotten out of the narcissistic relationship. So
Yes.
in this broadcast, we're going to talk about, what happens when you realized you were in a relationship with a narcissist. So if you're a boyfriend, girlfriend, you broke up, or if you're married, you got a divorce, or if you were the employee, you left that situation. And if they were your parent, you set up appropriate boundaries. So how do we go about rebuilding our self-esteem after we've been in a narcissistic relation or a relationship with a narcissist?
Right. It's a process. And self-validation is one of the main things that you want to do, which is why I really wanted to talk about this today. It's about self-love, self-validation. It's about the first thing that you have to do is you have to be aware of what happened to you. And that's very difficult to do by yourself because your natural inclination is to go back and think things through, try to analyze them, try to see what you did, why you caused it. So it's very difficult to get out of the loop of what happened to you and the fact that you have no responsibility. It's very, the messages are so convoluted. So it's best to have someone like myself or anybody who's very well versed in narcissistic abuse to help you sort that stuff out and help you to see. Because the first thing that has to happen is we've got to lift that veil because you've been brainwashed. And so even though your thoughts feel like your thoughts, they're not your thoughts, but you can't know that. There's no way for you to separate the two of those things. So you need someone to help you lift the veil. Once you lift the veil, then you can begin doing the self-healing work. But you have to know what happened to you first.
Okay, now we're talking about the importance of self-validation after narcissistic abuse. Randi Fine, what does self-validation mean to you?
Self-validation means that no matter what happens, no matter what you do, you're okay with it because you, like yourself, you validate that you're okay. It doesn't matter. You don't have to live up to the expectations of anybody else. So when you're abused this way, you're taught, you're programmed that you're only as good as you're told you are. And so that message makes you very vulnerable. It keeps you, when you're out there, you're very vulnerable to predators because you're always looking for validation. What I have people do is the most important thing is to go within, to find all your resources that you have inside, because you have everything. But once you can self-validate, which means you don't need the approval of other people. Once you can do that for yourself, then you're strong and resilient in this world.
It sounds like a psychological immune system, really.
Yeah, it does.
And it sounds like this is something that's important for all of us, not just people who've had a relationship with a narcissist, right?
Yes, it's very true. A lot of people don't know how to self-validate. And, it's something that I had to learn too. This did not come naturally to me. But once you can do it, you develop this fierce sense of self and protectiveness over yourself. Because, when you come out of these relationships, the number one concern is that you're going to get back into another one. Even if it's childhood, work, whatever it is, it doesn't matter, friendship, narcissistic, you feel so vulnerable that you think, I didn't know what this was, so how am I going to know what the next one is? But when you learn to find all your resources from within and protect yourself, then you don't miss cues. You recognize red flags. You don't talk yourself out of what you're experiencing. One of the ways that narcissists really get us is they teach us that the way we feel about something, what our intuition is telling us, is wrong, and that we should go into our head, where they programmed us, and think it through in their way. So what we do is we have a gut feeling, we know something's wrong, but we go into our head and start rationalizing it away because that's what they want us to do. They don't want us to have intuition. They teach us not to trust our intuition.
Okay, now can you give us some examples, whether we are in a relationship or gotten out of a relationship, or we just want to be healthier psychologically? How can we go about validating who we are, what we think, and what we feel?
Okay, so, I have an exercise, and I'm going to actually look at it now, that I'm going to offer everybody. After the show is over, if you email me at Randi Fine, loveyourlife@randifine.com, and mention the show, I'm going to send it to you because there's a lot of information here. But the first thing is to explore where the invalidation began. And so I have a list of things that are typical that we say to ourselves when we've been through these situations. And how you feel is wrong, what you experienced never happened. It's not okay to have emotions. You're crazy, sick, overdramatic, and unstable. Everything is your fault. You're worthless. You'll never amount to anything. You're inadequate. Your value is based on what you can do for others. You're powerless to change your life. And there's a whole long list of this. And so what I suggest people do is go through this list and just check off everything that they believe is false. Get rid of all those messages that doesn't resonate with them. And then circle the ones that they believe are true. And then one at a time, go through these messages and really begin to think about them, really begin to prove. If you think this is true, then what is the proof? Give me evidence that this is who I am. I've got this message. Is this really true? So you've really got to start going through all these things that you've been told and arguing with yourself, saying, well, I'm believing that, but I don't know why. And then you want to create an opposing statement to each one of these things. But this is a whole exercise that I have people do, because narcissistic abuse is so convoluted, so confusing, that, as I said in the beginning, picking it apart and finding out where you end and the programming begins, where you end and the narcissist begins, finding out which are your thoughts and which aren't your thoughts. It's all a big, big mess, tangled up mess. So I try to break it down for people and help them begin to recognize what's real and what's not real. One of the first things people say to me, first time they have a session with me, because I do coaching worldwide, as they're telling me their story, because I always say, tell me your story. As they're telling me their story, they're interjecting, does that make sense? Does that make sense? Does that make sense? Does that make sense? All throughout the conversation. Because as they're saying it, they don't even think it makes sense. So it's a very confusing and disorienting syndrome that happens when you get away from these people. You've got to begin to pick it apart, but it's very difficult to do on your own.
It sounds like once we have come out of a narcissistic relationship, that part of what we have to do is literally rebuild our sense of who we are, yes, what we think, what we feel, who we decide we are, right?
Absolutely. That's absolutely right. Very good. Very well said, Catherine.
And why, Randi Fine, why do survivors of narcissistic abuse have difficulty with self-validation?
Well, it's especially true for those who have suffered in childhood, because they were only as good as they were told they were. And that was only in the moment. So children in these environments are conditioned, programmed for external validation. They're just pawns in the narcissist's game. And so you're at the mercy of how they're going to move you around, what they're going to say to you, how they're going to label you, whether you're good, whether you're bad. But in all cases of narcissistic abuse, the beliefs that survivors have were imposed by someone whose entire agenda was to devalue them. So narcissists have to devalue their hostages. That's what I call, we call them relationships. With a narcissist, it's not a relationship, it's a hostage situation. So, you have to, their agenda is to keep you abused so that you won't leave, so that they can keep feeding on you, basically.
It sounds really psychologically unhealthy.
Yes.
Now, Randi Fine, why is it so hard for someone to get validation about what was done to them from their narcissistic abuser?
Well, that's a good question, because narcissists never acknowledge what they've done, and they never validate the perspective of the victim who experienced it. And since they never think they do anything wrong, they will never admit to doing anything wrong. And no matter how much evidence you present to them, they will never see their part in it or take any responsibility for what they've done. So for the devastation they caused, they always see themselves as victims. They never see the victim as having any problem. It's always about them. They can do what they want to other people, but it's always about how they feel what they want.
And why is it hard for people who've experienced narcissistic abuse to get validation from their friends and family?
Well, that's another really good question, because this abuse takes place behind closed doors. So these people have never witnessed the abuse. The narcissist that they see is kind and charming. They love this person. They think that they really believe that their friend or family member has met, the ideal man, ideal woman. And even if it's childhood, your parent presents themselves to the outside world as this warm, charismatic, loving, giving, charitable person. They're all very charitable because they get a lot of kudos from that, and it makes them look really good to the outside world. But narcissists are consummate actors. They can morph into whatever they want, and nobody, if you haven't lived through this, you will not believe that any behavior could be this bizarre and this abusive. They can't imagine anybody's being so irrational and cruel.
Right. Now we're talking about how to recover from narcissistic abuse. So, different experts say, for example, that if you go through a divorce, just an ordinary run-of-the-mill divorce, which is hard enough, it takes on average about 3 years to get over that. How long, in your experience, does it take for people to actually psychologically recover from being in a relationship with a narcissist?
Good question. That's another really, really good question. It really varies. If the person who has suffered this abuse tries to do it by themselves, they never will. They may push it aside, they may put it behind a wall, but they will never recover from it. And what will happen is they will repeat this behavior. It's like they're going to repeat it till the universe hits them with a 2x4 and makes it the worst it can possibly be, and says, you better fix yourself or you're going to keep doing this. So it's so insidious and so deep set, because it's mind control and brainwashing. It's on a level that we can't get to. It's a subconscious level that we cannot get to on our own. This is really serious stuff, Catherine. This is about as bad as it gets. This is the worst kind of abuse that anyone can suffer, because you don't know how to, there's just no way to understand what's happened to you and how to heal. But if you get help, you can heal really quickly from this if you have the right kind of help. Most of the people that work with me, even the worst, if they work with me every week for like 6 months, they're usually good to go. Now, I say that if there are children involved in the divorce, that complicates things dramatically. And it could be a lifetime of suffering at the hands of this person, just because you have children together.
Now, let's say you recognize that you were in a relationship with a narcissist, either the child of one or had an intimate relationship with one. You get out of that relationship, you move forward, but then you notice that you're having patterns of having other relationships, either with friends or other intimate partners that happen to be with other narcissists. Mm-hmm. How do you go about stopping that and, getting back on track, if you will, to having healthy relationships?
Okay. It's all kind of the same thing. The answers are all pretty similar, because in order to have healthy relationships, you have to understand, it all goes back to self-love, self-validation, boundaries. Adult children who have been raised in a home with a narcissistic parent, they have never been taught boundaries. They don't know what they look like. They have no idea what a boundary is. So they're just open season for anything. So, it's about developing boundaries, developing self-validation. But self-love is really the crucial part of this, because you have to care enough about yourself that you will protect yourself at any cost. And that's a difficult thing, because narcissists tell you that anytime you want to do something for yourself, you're being selfish. So the whole thing gets confused between selfishness and self-love. So survivors that come out of these relationships, they think that loving themselves is a selfish thing to do. So that's something that they've got to work on and understand, that if they don't bring everything back to themselves, if they don't love themselves and fill that well with love, because these people are caring, giving people who tend to give to others before they give to themselves, and then they feel drained. But they want to give to others. So if you don't give to yourself first and fill up that well with love, constant filling, then you can't give it out, because all it does is just drain you. But when you come to self-love, so they need to understand the importance of self-love. But there's getting out of a relationship, a romantic with a relationship with a narcissist, there's some problems with that. One of the problems is that narcissists get your brain chemically addicted to them in the very beginning. They do things deliberately to get the dopamine going, the oxytocin going, and they get you high on them. And often people will tell me, especially women will tell me, this is not a man I would have looked twice at, but he somehow I can't get over him. Somehow I can't get him out of my mind. So they are intimate very quickly. They get you hooked. And so when you leave these people, even though you know that they're terrible for you, even that you know that you're going to die if you stay in this relationship, you still want that person. So you've got to get over that addiction. And it's the same as any other addiction. It happens with abstinence. You just have to deal with that, coming off that drug.
Right. Now, Randi Fine, what are some of the action steps that we can take to learn how to love ourselves and to love ourselves more?
Okay. The first thing I tell people is to pay attention to what you're saying to yourself. Because you don't realize, even if you're trying to, if I say, do something nice for yourself each day. Okay. If you're doing that, but you're saying to yourself, I can't believe I stayed in this thing. Why did I waste so many years? I can't believe I was this stupid. I can't believe I didn't see it. Blah, 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 blah. These are all unloving statements. So I tell people to be very conscious of what you're saying to yourself that is unloving. Because for all those times that you say those things, you are defeating any other efforts that you're putting forth in the name of self-love. Another thing to do is each day, just state that you're going to love yourself a little bit more today. Just a millimeter, because you understand millimeters eventually become meters. So, or inches become miles, or whatever it is. So each day you just state to yourself in the morning, today I'm going to love myself a little bit more than I did yesterday. And it's just baby steps. And in the beginning, it's like walking in the dark. You don't know where you're going, but you just do it. And it eventually builds up. And there's different ways to love yourself. It's not just what you do for yourself, it's what you say to yourself. It's how much you appreciate who you are and accept who you are. Faults, and quirks and whatever.
Those are some great suggestions. Now, in my work as a medical intuitive, what I find is that people who've been in narcissistic abuse relationships, it's like their energetic boundaries have been completely destroyed to the point where they don't even know who they are.
Yes.
And what I find, one helpful exercise that I find is have them to do mirror work. So what you do when you're doing mirror work is you put a mirror in front of yourself and you look in your own eyes. And while you're looking in your own eyes, you say positive statements to yourself. Like, I care about you enough to, take, healthy actions today. And, and speaking to yourself in the mirror, because I have clients who can't even see themselves, like they don't recognize who they are, right? Mm-hmm. So by literally looking in the mirror, looking at yourself in your own eyes and speaking to who you really are, you can begin to reconstruct a sense of self.
That's great. That's great.
Yeah.
Absolutely. Yeah, there's a couple other things that I do. Like, one of the things is writing the love letter to yourself. Yeah. That's a really good one. And another thing that I tell people, I will ask them, who loves you in this life? Do you have children? Who loves you? And then I say, pay attention to that love that they're giving you, because that's authentic. And you can sense how important you are to someone else when you recognize how much you are loved. They don't understand what it feels like to be loved, yet they probably have relationships in their life that are loving. So I have them pay attention to those relationships as well.
Right. And often I find that when people have been abused, and there's all kinds of abuse, we can have a whole other discussion about kinds of abuse, but when people have been abused, their energetic boundaries are broken down, and they direct a lot of negativity and even self-hatred towards themselves. And one of the things that I say to people is, you can't heal your body if you hate it. And you can't heal yourself if you hate yourself.
That's true.
Right? So the more that we can cultivate compassion and forgiveness, I'm a great believer in Ho'oponopono, which is this very simple mantra that you can use to forgive yourself and others. And the most important person to forgive is actually yourself. So you have to forgive yourself first, and then you can forgive others, right?
Right.
Right. So Randi Fine, what rights can and should narcissistic abuse survivors claim?
Okay. Well, they have the right to love themselves and treat themselves well. They have the right to believe in themselves. They have the right to live life unencumbered by the abuse of the past. They have the right to live a happy life. They have the right to do whatever it takes to protect themselves from abuse and other predators. And they have the right to say no to toxic relationships. But I'm just getting ready to, on my website, I'm going to put up, it's called the Personal Bill of Rights, and it's, oh my gosh, 20, 30 different rights that we have as abused people. And it's going to be a downloadable sort of 11 by 17 poster that you can download and then frame. They're beautiful. But it's great to have this, because then you can look at these rights. These are just amazing rights. But basically, you have the right to protect yourself, to treat yourself well. You have the right to walk in this world with confidence, and you have the right to have love in your life. There's so many things that, that you may overlook.
So one of the things that we all need as human beings is love. And there's many different kinds of love, but if someone who's listening to this broadcast and has gotten out of a narcissistic relationship and is working on healing themselves, what are some of the key things that that person needs to do in order to have a healthy relationship, a healthy, intimate relationship moving forward?
Okay, good. Good question. All right, so remember that relationships are two whole people coming together. That people that can live separately but choose to be together. You don't want to get into a relationship because you need something emotionally from that person. It doesn't mean that you can't rely on that person emotionally, but you want to come in as a whole person, because relationships are not 50-50, but they're 100-100. When you're in a relationship with a narcissist, you'll notice that if you don't hold it up, it doesn't exist. So you want to have, you want your partner to be as equally invested in the relationship as you are. That's number one. But it's really important, the dating process, when you've come out of these relationships, the dating process is really important to note, because in order to avoid anybody getting you addicted to them and just turning your head to the point where you don't know which end is up and you're so in love and you're so, giddy, you don't want to get in too intimate too fast, and you want to keep your dating relationship outside of your homes. Don't bring them to your place. Don't go to their place. Have dates. You can go on hikes. You can go on walks. You can go to the beach, whatever you want to do. But keep it outside of your home so that you can get to know this person. Now, if somebody is trying to move you too fast through a relationship, that's a red flag. So pay attention to the red flags. Once you're in these relationships, allow yourself to be loved. And that is something that you really do have to practice in the dating part of it, because you're not used to allowing yourself to be loved. You are the giver, you're not the receiver. And so I tell people in the beginning, when you're dating, don't give. Allow the other person to give and you receive. And it's going to be really uncomfortable because you think that your worth is only about what you can give. But somebody that cares about you is going to give to you, and you have to learn to receive. And that's it. Then it becomes this mutual thing. Eventually, you can be the giver, and and it becomes a balance. But initially, if you give too much, you don't know if you're really with a healthy person and somebody that is going to reciprocate.
Right. That makes total sense. Mm-hmm. So when a person has been in a abusive relationship with a narcissist, or you mentioned that they're the giver and the narcissist is basically the taker, right?
Yes. Mm-hmm.
Right. So and you mentioned that when we go into new relationships, we need to practice receiving, right?
Yes, right.
Okay. So what are some red flags when a person is dating that the person that they're dating might be another narcissist?
Okay, so one of the things is what I just mentioned, that they're moving really fast, because what they want to do is trap you. Mm-hmm. They're going to be wonderful, but they can only do it for so long. They need to trap you so that they can then abuse you. And so that's one red flag. Another red flag is somebody who interviews you in the beginning, because what they do is, they're your immediate best friend. You have never had anybody care so much about what you have to say in your life as these people are. And they want to know everything. And they interview you and interview you and interview you. And the reason they do this is because they're packing away the information of exactly how to abuse you. They want to know what you lacked in your childhood. They want to know what you want in the future. They want to know what hurts you, what feels good. They want to know everything. And you tell them, and then you'll notice when you're in the relationship, that's where they push your buttons, exactly there. So you want to avoid the interview process. You know, a balance in this is just very good. You know, you talk about yourself, they talk about themselves, you know, but none, you know, not too much on one side or the other, or somebody who is just talking about themselves. Another thing is, don't believe everything you hear. So before you commit yourself to a relationship, validate what has been said to you. Because narcissists will tell you that they've done, that they're this and they're that, and you want to make sure that it's true. It's good to meet the family if you can before you get involved. You want to see what their background is. And one more thing that I can think of right now is narcissists will bash their past relationships. If someone is bashing and blaming the demise of their last relationship on the other person, red flag, because this is what they do. They trash the last person and they make you think it was all the other person's fault and they had no part in it. So someone who doesn't take responsibility for their past is another red flag.
Right. So healing from a narcissistic relationship involves rebuilding your sense of self, validating what you think, validating what you feel, and really paying attention to red flags when we're around other people, right?
Yeah, right. And trusting your intuition, because you're going to know right away if something's not right. You just have to be careful, because people who get caught up in these types of relationships are generally the people who are, they see potential in everybody. They give everybody the benefit of the doubt. And so when they see something bad, they go, oh, no. Well, you know, that can't be true, you know, and they give them the benefit of the doubt. That's another thing. Don't give anybody the benefit of the doubt. People have to prove who they are before you allow them deeply into your life.
Right. So, Randi Fine, narcissistic abuse expert, what are some of the benefits that can be gained by learning to self-validate?
Okay, good question. You take back your personal power. You don't allow yourself to be judged by people who have no right to judge you, and they have no grounds in which to judge you. You don't have to prove your worth or defend who you are to anyone. You don't ever have to defend the position that you take. As long as you know it's true. And as long as you know that it's healthy. You don't have to convince others of what you know is true. You know, you don't have to talk people into things. They either can accept it or they can't accept it, but you don't have to convince anybody. And accept that being invalidated or disbelieved does not make you wrong, you know, or a liar or anything like that. That just because people don't like what you sell or like who you are, it doesn't matter. You know who you are. And that's, you know, that takes time. That kind of thing takes time.
Now, are there psychological syndromes or moods that go along with this? I mean, everything that you're talking about sounds like a lot of hard work, a lot of hard inner work. Mm-hmm. Is it very common once you get out of a narcissistic relationship to experience depression or anxiety?
Oh, very much so, because narcissistic abuse situations create complex post-traumatic stress disorder. So you will have, yes, you will have the full syndrome Just like, you know, soldiers and vets coming out of the army, you will have flashbacks, you will have anxiety, you will have panic attacks, you will have depression. Sleep will be, you may have trouble sleeping, you may have nightmares, startle reflex, lots of things. So depression is one of the big ones. You will be sad, you will be depressed. You feel hopeless. You really feel like nothing's ever going to get better. You're just so down because everything just looks doom and gloom to you. Now, that said, once you can grasp the nature of the relationship, and as I said in the beginning, lift that veil. The veil is lifted and you go, I see it. I see everything that person is. I see what they did. I see my part in it. Once you can do that and you realize that the relationship you thought you had was not a relationship at all, whether it be your parents, once you come to the realization that there was no love, it was all abuse. And in any of these situations, come to the realization that nothing was real. You weren't loved. This was not a relationship. It was completely one-sided, and the other person was an imposter, an actor. Once you come to that realization, you will go through the full grieving process because you're grieving the death of a dream. Whether if it was your family is an emotionally charged word. We think for years and generations, and we're bringing our kids over their house and we're going to spend holidays together and everything. It's the death of a dream. And if you're in a relationship or a marriage, well, you expected that to be forever. If you married somebody, you expect that to be forever. So this is the death of a dream. You will go through a full grieving process. And it's important to allow the process, to feel the pain, you know, not to try to get busy and move through, you know, and just ignore it. You need to sit with it.
You've been listening to the Natural Healing Show for UK Health Radio. I'm your host, Catherine Carrigan, medical intuitive healer, Amazon #1 best-selling author. You can find out more about me and my work at catherinecarrigan.com and unlimitedenergynow.com. While you're there, definitely sign up for my newsletter so you can learn even more about how you can heal yourself naturally. Our guest today has been Randi Fine, narcissistic abuse expert. You can find out more about Randi Fine at randifine.com. And remember that if you recognize you have been in a relationship with a narcissist, you can definitely heal. And you do that by rebuilding your sense of self and validating who you are, what you want, what you need, and what you feel. Thanks so much for listening, and we'll see you next time.